Hi, I'm making this video for the 45th anniversary of an event that I'll never forget. It was a day that I found myself in the wrong place at the wrong time. I'm not complaining, okay? It could have turned out worse, a lot worse. The day was July 29th, 1967, and I was aboard the destroyer USS Samuel N. Moore DD 747, which was escorting the carrier Oriskany in the Gulf of Tonkin. Around 1100, I spied a plume of black smoke on the horizon. It was huge, like a thunderstorm, and it rose all the way up to the stratosphere, where the winds aloft were shearing off the tops as in a kind of a gray smear. From where I was standing, I couldn't see the base of the fire. It was so far away that it was hidden beyond the curvature of the earth. Presently, the ship started heading in that direction at high speed, having only 2 boilers online at the time that would have been 25 knots. There was no word of what was going on. There was no announcement to man fire stations or anything of the sort. After about 20 minutes, a guy came down the ladder from the bridge. I think he was a signalman. He came aft to where I was standing with 5 other sailors and said one word. He said, "Forrestal." Knowing what that meant, we immediately broke out the fire hose on the main deck and the bulkhead back by the aft engine room hatch. Nobody was in charge, no orders were given, just the first guy there became the nozzleman by default, and the last guy in line, myself, was the guy to open the valve. We faked out the hose nearly the length of the ship, pressurized it, and the nozzleman gave a couple of long bursts over the side to make sure everything was in readiness. At that point, the Forrestal was still beyond the horizon, so all we could do is stand around and wait. When we finally arrived, other destroyers were already tending Forrestal from the windward side, so we were forced to come in from leeward. I remember that by then the smoke back aft where the incident had started was kind of thinning out, but there was still heavy smoke coming from up by the bow from right under the flight deck. And I noticed that it was kind of odd because the smoke coming out there was white instead of black, and instead of rising up in the air like the black smoke was doing, the white smoke was settling down toward the sea. I don't know what was up with that. Anyway, the skipper, Commander DJ Matson, took us right in alongside the carrier. It was so close that I could have bounced a tennis ball off the carrier and caught it on the rebound. It was so close, I remember thinking, somebody better put some fenders over the side, because if we smack up against that sucker, the deck apes are going to be spending a couple days hanging over the side repainting the hull. That didn't happen. Going in was kind of like traveling in slow motion. You could see the smoke coming closer and closer and closer and closer until we were actually in it. At that point, I noticed 2 things immediately. One, as white as the smoke was on the outside, it was coal black on the inside. The second thing I noticed was pain. Intense, searing pain. I don't know what was in that smoke, but it felt like someone had thrown acid into my eyes. And trying to breathe was like a blowtorch, searing the insides of my lungs. It was pure torture. So, since there was not enough OBAs, that's oxygen breathing apparatuses, to go around, we tried to make impromptu smoke masks by pulling our t-shirts up over our heads and pulling our dungaree shirts over that and then clapping our baseball caps on top of everything else, trying to filter out the smoke. Originally, I intended on wearing my actual dungaree shirt to do a demonstration. But after all those years of hanging in the closet, it must have shrunk because it doesn't fit anymore. Yeah, right. Okay. I don't know how long we fought that fire. I figure it was about 15 minutes, maybe 20. But the agony was so intense that it was like a lifetime in hell. I don't know how else to describe it. Toward the end, our situation was getting desperate. I was trying not to breathe because it hurt so bad. And by then, I was doing everything by feel because my eyes had filled up with this goopy mucus of some sort, and it glued my eyes shut so I couldn't see. Finally, it reached a point where I was beginning to lose the ability to concentrate. I couldn't think of what I was doing. My brain was getting scrambled. And at the same time, I was kind of losing muscle control. I kind of slumped over on my side. And I was down on my hands and knees straddling the hose, trying to prevent it from kinking. And I fell forward with my head against the hose. And I could hear the water running through the hose, you know, through the bones in the skull. And there was something else curious. It was cool. It was, you know, like kind of a blessed relief, the coolness in the midst of my worst nightmare. Anyway, it reached a state, my brain was getting so scrambled that I realized that I was dying of smoke inhalation. And it was frightening because the guys up the line ahead of me had stopped coughing. I thought they'd probably already succumbed. And things were flashing in and out. It's like my brain was turning on and off as if somebody was flipping a light switch. And it's kind of funny what a fellow thinks when he's dying. My last rational thought before my brain fuzzed out entirely was that I hoped that my mother wouldn't cry too much because that would upset my dad unnecessarily. Following that, there was an indeterminate period of time where I had no knowledge of what was happening. But I eventually came to realize that I was still alive when I felt a blast of heat on my back. I surmised correctly that the ship had broken out into bright sunlight. Now I couldn't see it because the mucus over my eyes had encrusted like gritty cement, so I couldn't even detect the light through my eyelids. So I remember I crawled to the side of the ship and I hung my head overboard, taking deep gasping breaths. It still hurt, and it hurt like hell, but it was better than breathing the smoke. Well, right about that time, some guy came by and asked me if I wanted some water. So what I did is I cupped my hands, and he poured the water into my hands. But instead of drinking it, I put it up to my eyes to try and unglue this cement that was preventing me from opening my eyes. I tried to do it earlier with spit, but there wasn't enough to do it. So eventually, I remember when I pried my eyes open, I was looking over the side of the ship, and I was kind of mesmerized. I was watching the mucus from my mouth and the snot from my nose dripping into the ocean. It was kind of weird. So anyway, by then, the ship had been sent back along the path of the carrier to look for men in the water. We didn't find any, and we didn't expect to, because the helicopters from the carrier Oriskany had already scoured the area at least a dozen times. Oh, we saw a lot of stuff. I mean, I remember one of those external fuel tanks, you know, the aluminum bullet-shaped things floating by. And I saw the ends of what looked like some wooden crates, and a lot of stuff that I couldn't identify. Just stuff, foam, grease. I don't know, discoloration. So by then, I had gotten all the sailors available topside to man the rails, and our job was to put a lot of eyes on the sea to see if there was anything we could find. And I remember they told us to not talk because they wanted us to listen for something in case we missed it visually. And that didn't work out too well because guys were still having coughing fits from the smoke. I mean, a half hour later, still coughing. You know. So anyway, I remained there until shortly before 1600 when it's time to relieve the watch. Thereafter, I have no recollection of anything else that happened that day. So there you have it. That's the story of July 29th, 1967. Thank you for watching.